go through a major life-changing event. And when I came out of that event and I started speaking and sharing that event, you immediately see how it lands on other people. And the second that happened, I got hooked. The same way it is, and I bet you could remember, and anybody even listening, that first time you train an athlete and all of a sudden you see the impact you have on them.
We're so very fortunate to have three phenomenal partners of the podcast. Play, Rock Daisy, and Output are all companies that I've worked with for many years and fully endorse. Make sure that you support them when you can, or let them know when you see them how much you appreciate them being part of this podcast. Hey guys, welcome back to the CEO Strength Coach podcast. I'm your host, Ron McKeefery, and I got a special one for you today. Tom Morris is the director of high performance at Penn State University. We go back at least a decade, maybe longer at this point, and just a good friend, good dude, one of the all-time great guys in our profession, just doing some phenomenal things. But super excited to talk about his story. If you want to go back and watch, we did an episode, Iron Game Chalk Talk, just more about kind of his story and everything. But this episode, I really want to focus on the work that he's doing right now outside of the weight room and how he's making an impact beyond just the four walls, and just a special dude, a special family, and appreciate you being on, man.
Oh my God, this is an honor to be here. I can remember when we were on that first episode of Chalk Talk, and that was almost like right after that life-changing accident, and still trying to get organized on it. So it's awesome to be back here. And yeah, you said it, man. This is a lot of fun.
You spent a lot of years training athletes at the highest level, but in recent years, your message has reached well beyond the field. So what kind of sparked the decision to start speaking and creating courses and kind of doing some of these entrepreneurial things outside of the weight room?
I think the big thing, back in the day when we talked about this idea of being an entrepreneur, from the books you've written to just the overall mindset. My first job was $28,000 a year. I mean, $28,000 a year was pretty challenging to live off of. And so my thing is you don't sit there just asking for handouts. You don't just sit begging for people to hopefully give you money. And so this world of, hey, we get to wear these major brands. We get to be fortunate to be part of stuff that's bigger than us. Why don't we capitalize on it? Why don't we somehow turn that into some kind of monetary way of bringing some funds into our house? And so I started off with just doing some old school personal training. It was before the era of the fact that the NCAA didn't really look at the golfers and the soccer players. Now it's a little bit different. But I started personal training, and then that just kept growing and growing and growing. And we ran speed camps, and that's where the whole entrepreneurial mindset just came from. And so you fast forward and then to May 17, 2012, life gets, go through a major life-changing event. And when I came out of that event and I started speaking and sharing that event, you immediately see how it lands on other people. And the second that happened, I got hooked. The same way it is, and I bet you could remember, and anybody even listening, that first time you train an athlete and all of a sudden you see the impact you have on them. You forcing a rep or just showing belief in them, and you see them, kind of doing things that they didn't think were possible. Well, when I spoke and I shared my story and I told it, and you have all these people that just felt this inspiration, and I just got hooked. I got hooked on the fact of the whole process of getting out and speaking in front of crowds. It's very similar to being an athlete. It's like you go and you scout the crowd, you figure out who the audience is going to be, you figure out the message you want to do or to give, and then the second you're getting ready to get on stage and there's 1,000 people in front of you, your heart's pounding, you're sitting there thinking, why the frick did I do this? This is how I was before every sporting event. But the second you get up there and start speaking, you're just addicted to it all over again, and you feel how it really, really does impact the people out there. But that's kind of a long-winded answer to the entrepreneurial. The idea of doing a lot of this stuff is just the fact that you really, really could impact people's lives, and you could do it at scale.
There's a lot of things in there. I think there's the financial piece, which I think a lot of coaches that are listening to this will identify with. Just like it is a long road to kind of make it in this profession. For 80% of the of the strength coaches, you're living paycheck to paycheck, and so finding these alternative ways to create some income. What I say is you're trying to create stability in an unstable environment, with strength conditioning, but you got to have that. And that's a natural progression. And usually, typically, that kind of falls into training other people and things like that. But then there's the calling piece and the vocational piece of like, I want to do more. I want to affect what we got into this for, which is to change people's lives. You can't just do that just in the weight room. You can do that in a lot of variety of ways. And as coaches, we all develop these skills that translate into some inspirational messages and moments and stories and those types of things. I want to dig in first to the financial side of things, because I think that's, a lot of coaches that are listening. Okay, I get it. I need to make some additional money. I need to do some other things. A lot of people's backup plan is I'll just go open a gym, or I'll just go work at a performance facility, or whatever. And that's nice. But it's hard to scale that, right? What you're doing now is speaking and doing these things and kind of creating a business. What was the first step when you're like, okay, I want to take this serious. I want this to be a legitimate side business. Way to, was it, what were the first steps to kind of do that?
Yeah, I think the number one step was get organized on what the message is going to be. As far as who I am in that given moment. I think that's it's the thing that we work with as a strength coach. You have an athlete, you have a goal where you want them to get to. You have to know where they're at right now. You test them, you figure out where they're at in that moment. And so for me, I had this. After the aha moment of speaking and feeling that energy, the first step in that entrepreneurial journey was, what does my business look like right now, as far as who I am, the values I possess, the message, the influence that I want to have. And then I think about that in a way of structuring out the business itself and giving it kind of, for lack of better terms, just a soft ethos, a way to at least describe this moment or that original moment of where I was at. And then from there, I had this kind of audacious goal of where I wanted to go. Now, that goal to me is kind of irrelevant. It doesn't matter if I ever actually achieve that goal. That goal is, though, to be it's to be that Tony Robbins type level where you're in front of tens of thousands of people and impacting at scale. If I get there, I don't. It doesn't matter to me. It's just about this. The major part of it is then structuring the process to get moving into that direction. And so after I started understanding where I'm at in that given moment, I had my values, I had my ethos, I had who I was. And then everything started coming together, because at that point I started speaking about it. I started sharing it. I started trying to put out as much content as I could to hopefully catch the ears of someone to therefore grab a hold of it and start asking about it and then getting me in front of them. And, one of the big things is I said yes to everything, no matter. In that original days of starting that entrepreneur stuff, I have this mission, I have these values and ideas. And then I had a lot of people reach out and say, hey, would you do this? I don't have any money to pay you. You got to drive an hour and a half from here, but I'd love to have you get in front of my class, my church group, whoever it is. And I just said yes. And that yes led to bigger and better things.
I think a lot of strength coaches, like, there's no lack of confidence in strength conditioning, right? Most to get up in front of a group and lead a team and all that. But I think there is a certain comfort level that comes with being in your environment and then having to go outside of your environment where you lose some of that confidence sometimes. And I think a lot of strength coaches, even though we're very smart, possess all these intangibles that kind of would translate well to the business world. It's almost like the business world is this kind of like untouchable thing that we don't really know. So therefore we're not going to try it and we're just going to stay where we're comfortable. Right. But when you take that leap and you become the, business owner, like you become the social media marketer, you become the accountant, you become the, the visionary, all these different pieces that go into that. What was the most difficult piece of that for you and how did you overcome that?
Man, I think you just nailed the big thing. It's like when you're in an environment, you're in the weight room, you're rocking and rolling, you got confidence, you feel so good. Then you all of a sudden enter into this whole new world and you got a mission, you have a vision, you want to say, but you're entering into a world where you feel completely like an imposter. It's like, what do I know? Yeah, it's funny. I just got back from Chicago and I got to speak at Louis Vuitton, which, by the way, wife, this is like the greatest thing ever. Gave some free gear, which free gear there is pretty
Right.
nice. But I remember getting into that, you know, the original ones, like now it's a little different, but when I got into those original businesses and you figure out, man, I got to get in front of all these CEOs, all these people that make 10x the amount of money that I make, they know more, they're older, they're wiser. You go into that place with that imposter syndrome of what can I offer? And what I have found time and time again is I don't over promise anything. When I don't, I realized that when I went in there to lean on the values, lean on what I know, my experience, what my knowledge is, and the things I don't even try and fake it. I don't know if the whole fake it till you make it is the right thing, but by me living in the moment, giving what I had, every bit of what I had, never that whole imposter syndrome kind of just faded away because it was something that replaced the imposter syndrome was this almost this vulnerability of saying, I don't know. And it all of a sudden connected more of the dots because what I did know and what they knew, it drew this connection together. And all of a sudden, I got more references and I got more referrals and so many more things start happening when I just chose not to fake it till I make it and just go into it and give what I got and ask more questions and be willing to say, I don't know.
Yeah, it's good. It's such a great lesson because, like I remember being in China. I was sitting in Beijing, China, and I'm negotiating a multi-million-dollar contract with the family that brought the Olympics to Beijing. And we're sitting at a restaurant through an interpreter, and we're talking about this coaching contract where I was going to put coaches over there. And what I realized in that moment was like, he didn't know either. Like, he didn't know what that was going to be. And I didn't know what it was going to be. And it was exactly what you just said. It was just asking questions back and forth. And you kind of like this shared expertise kind of landed on a really good plan that gave an incredible experience for 22 coaches, and it convinced me in that moment that those business owners and those people that have been in those positions, they've just had more opportunity to be in those board meetings, and the more that we can do that as coaches and put ourselves in those rooms, the more that our skills are going to shine.
No, and it's so true because, and this is the other part of it is that when you're in those rooms, and you're right, there's like you come into it, you have the person you're negotiating with. There is no exact where you have an idea of where you want to go, but how to get there, they don't know, you don't know. But we all love the fact of when we present an idea that someone says, oh. But then each of us, when we feed off, I hope this comes out the right way, but it's almost like when we both show the team ability to come up with a solution, all of a sudden it's a no-brainer. It's 100%. You're not only going to get the job, you're going to come up with a better product and you're going to have both sides of the story having the ownership. No one likes to have someone come in and say, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. It's always great to have someone to come in with ideas, but also hear the current group that you're speaking to. I found it time and time again. I got into a consulting side of it, and speaking is one thing when you're up in front of them, but when you actually got to sit down for 3 days with a board, that's pretty intimidating. And what I found is exactly that. Like I could start the conversation, I'd say what I had to say, but the 99% of the time, it's them giving some solutions and me giving a third party to look in. But I think it goes back to what you were saying because a strength coach is man, they just got so many multiple layers of skill from personality to problem solving to just a really strong empathy to want to make people better around them. And I think the more, the weight room's awesome and I love it, but the more we could get out and scale a message, scale an energy, a passion, a love, just an overall betterment of the world. It's like my biggest passion in the world to do that.
Yeah, I think, you hit on what I was going to follow up with, which is the problem solving piece. I mean, that's so natural to a strength coach because that's all you do all day long, is solve these problems. And so you get in those rooms and you're like kind of sitting there like, I got the answer. Should I say something? Should I not say something? I get this idea. I don't know if it's dumb, but I think it's good, and you can, it's kind of fun when you get in those rooms and you have that. I think that builds your confidence. And I think, again, the more you can do that on like hiring committees and, all these different things within the university to kind of continue to develop those skills, the better you're going to be. And I think it's super important for coaches to get outside of that, the four walls and develop those skills.
That's it, especially as a young coach too. It's 20, 30-year-olds. I mean, there's so many opportunities. You wear a logo, like you don't even have to say anything smart. You wear a logo. They just want to be around you. And for growth, for stuff that you're really, really going to look back on when you're in your 40s, you say yes in your 20s and 30s to speak at the Boys and Girls Club, to be on a hiring committee, to I don't know, to do anything that just gets you out of that little bit of a comfort zone and puts you into more discomfort, but also you can't get it wrong. Networking still is the super strength of all of this. By you getting out of the weight room and meeting more people, God, it's is the most important thing I think in the world, is getting out, networking, saying hi, being a likable person that people wants to be around. Because when you are, whew, doors open up and people will just keep coming and want you around.
So I think coaches are listening to this and are like, okay, I get it. I like those things. Like I want to speak, I want to write, I want to do these types of things. And they're concerned. They're concerned about the university's perception of that. They're concerned about maybe fans' perception of them putting something out on social media. They're concerned about like, how do they do this without blurring the lines and all those types of things. What I tell coaches is that, like there's times in your career where, like right now you got a job, you got a great job. Like you don't need the money necessarily, be nice for some, to have some additional income, and there's ways to do that. But like, the number one step is to build a tribe of people that know, like, and trust you.
Yeah.
And you've done a really, really good job of that through your email newsletters and some of the content that you put out on social media and things along those lines, where you're building this following and this community that at some point or right now, you find a way to leverage that right where you're at, or you find a way to leverage it when you need it. And I think that's the problem where a lot of coaches face, is they wait till like, okay, I got fired. I'm tired of doing what I'm doing and whatever it is. And they're like, okay, now I'm going to start my thing with no tribe, no following, nothing to leverage. Talk a little bit about how you've been intentional with building that tribe and that community to network within, so that you can tap into that in various different ways.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a great question. And everything you said is so true. And I go back to it time and time again. 99% of the thing is like, am I worried about what the employer is going to say? Am I worried about all these different situations which I don't want to take away from? But 90% of the chance or reason why you're not doing something is because you're just worried about how somebody else is going to perceive you. And I mean, that's the nature of being a human. The truth is, I just don't think many people are even worried about other people. And the ones that are, they really are just stuck in their own kind of heads with it. And so for me, it was this thing of saying, you know what, this is what I believe. I have the credentials. I've been very, very fortunate and humbled to be able to be in a profession that is very challenging to get to sustain. But I've also had something that I've had to go through in life that's really challenging. And I have a complete 100% certainty that this message, this energy, this way of viewing the world is it's one of the right ways. It's a great perspective. And I think it does a disservice when we don't necessarily express who we are, our thoughts, our energy, or just our own stories. And so I don't know when it was, but maybe 5, 6 years ago, I just said, screw it. I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to talk into it like somebody that I never wanted to do. My heart would pound. I didn't like it. It wasn't naturally me. Put me in front of people, I'd love to talk. Put me in front of that phone and put it out there. God, it's just so intimidating. But what I found is like when you put something out there and even one person comes back to you and says, I really needed that today, it just made it all worth it. And so I thought, you know what? I don't care. I just don't care what other people think. If my employer itself doesn't want it, yeah, I think I would change some things around. But I think a good message and a good thought process, every employer, they want to spread that out, especially in this world of recruiting. And so that's it's a long-winded answer to, I started with just doing some social media stuff. And then what I did, and I think a great action item for all of us is on our emails right now, all the different things, all you got to do is hit A, and you will have a ton of people that will pop up on there. I call it my Fab 100, which ends up being almost 5,000 or so now. But I just take everybody's email, so I just collect emails over the years. They become this really kind of hot topic of you collect all these emails, and so that email list that you talk about every Monday I send out, and I just take that email list and send it out, and all it is a 300-word deal, where I hope it adds a little bit of positivity into the world. It gives a little perspective of maybe one of my own stories or a story that I've heard, and then you just share it. And I think by doing that from a good place, a good heart, an open heart, with truly trying to uplift people and everybody around me, I believe it's got to come back to you to full circle. So uh,
100%.
lot of stuff on there, but I think it all takes the idea of just saying, you know what, I'm going to start, I'm going to put something out there, I'm going to write about it, I'm going to read about, or I'm going to write about it, I'm going to talk about it, I'm going to put something out some way because it is important to who I am from a perspective, but even from an X's and O's standpoint.
You mentioned kind of like you mentioned Tony Robbins and a model there. I think, in our unique world, there is the added like outside perception of fans and these different people. So I do think that there's certain models that don't work. Like if you're just going to be on there and kind of be a used car salesman and promote every product or whatever, like I think that's gonna, that's probably gonna be not received well. But I do think, one of the models that you take, which is inspiration, or one of the models that I've often taken, which is kind of education or giving back to the coaching community, those models work because like anytime somebody comes and kind of confronts me about it, I'm like, I'm just trying to help coaches,
That's it.
or you're just trying to inspire people. And when you build a model like that, a lot of times, when you do write those books and they become bestsellers, or you go speak at Louis Vuitton, or you do those things, then you got your AD and the community celebrating you and lifting you up and even giving you more opportunity because of that brand. Talk a little bit about your model. How is your business built? Where do like the revenue streams kind of come from? How can somebody kind of replicate that inspiration model?
Yeah. I have three pieces to it. Well, first, it's exactly that. Is when I came to Penn State, I've known our AD for a long time. Even when I got to Indiana, we had history together. But one of the major things of coming here was, can I still kind of go out and speak and share and do it? And he 100% has that support, because to the point you just made is all of these things feed the brand of this. This is that good nature stuff. I'm not trying to sell you on, a certain brand of creatine, or I'm not trying to sell you on, I'm just hopefully going to try and make your life a little bit better. So all of it is, it's being very aware of what you're trying to put out there. So it's a great point. But how my brand works and what I'm trying to do is I have three different phases to it. The number one thing is the speaking. It's to be able to go to either other universities or businesses. I mean, everything from high schools to churches, to big businesses, Fortune 500 companies, and share my thoughts and share action items of how to, live a better life, live a more holistic, a better perspective, a way to deal with change. That's a really big thing for me, is how do you adapt to change? But you know how it is when you hear someone speak, we all leave, we go to a conference, you hear a Ron McKeefery speak, and you're like, that dude just, yeah, I'm ready, I want to go. And then all of a sudden you leave there motivated. But 3 days later, like it all just fizzles out. Like it doesn't, there's very, very few of us that make changes. And so for my thing is I hate that feeling. So I speak, then I try to sell people on a course that I created, and that course is called Changemaker. And that Changemaker course is 6 weeks. I keep it super cheap. It's more of just, charging something so like show the hell up. Like you paid at least something for this, so come in there and at least show up and participate. If you give everything for free, you'll end up like people don't validate it as much. And so from there, I have the Changemaker course, which has been awesome. We're in our 6th season. And the numbers just keep growing. And again, where does it go? I don't know. But I know that every year it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And so that's the other part. And then from that Changemaker course, I open it up that we could have one-on-one coaching, kind of executive coaching. And that executive coaching happens in a way that we schedule out 1 to 2 times, either weekly or bi-weekly. Bi-monthly, I should say. And then I help you kind of walk through some of the different ideas of structuring your life. And that's another one that's really intimidating. You sit down with First guy that ever asked me to do this, or I pitched him on and he said yes. That guy at 40 years old built 3 businesses. Each one of them sold for over $100 million. And I'm like, what in the hell am I going to teach this guy? Like, what am I going to say to him? And then it's unbelievable because when you start looking at his system around his day to day, how he wakes up, how he goes to bed, how he interacts with people, and you realize all the little gaps that are pieced throughout the day. You realize how, yes, he's working as a high performer, he's doing a lot of great things, but he's still not maxed out. Like, he still has a lot more time for the balance of his family and balance of where he wants to go. And so it felt really, really inspiring to do it. But that's my framework. Is speak, get people into the course. The course is a 6-week course that makes you get up in the morning with intentional focus on gratitude, and it walks you through. And then from there, we really deep dive into your life of really, really structuring it out in ways that you're going to help you achieve those goals.
Yeah, there's such good stuff there. I think, one thing I'll start with is you mentioned the word sell, and I think that turns a lot of people off. But the reality is that we're selling ourselves every single day, and we're actually really good at it as long as we believe in the product, right? Which is usually just the training of helping that athlete go from step A to step B, right? But in this situation, it's a message that you believe in, and it's something that you feel like truly believe that people are going to benefit from. And so that part of it becomes easy. And so that stigma, I think, is important to squash. I think the second thing that you pointed out that I really think is important is all those verticals, the speaking, the course, the one-on-one. The one-on-one is time consuming, but you got time,
Mhm.
you know. But the speaking, like, you probably created 1 or 2 messages that you kind of tweak to fit an audience. You created a course one time, and you've been able to kind of use that multiple times and maybe tweak it here and there and show up here and there. But a lot of people think that, hey, I'm working 16 hours a week. I don't have time to do all this stuff. Or I'm working 16 hours a day. I don't have time to do all this stuff. You got time. You can create a course in a spring break. You got, or anything along those lines. And so
I mean, we got ChatGPT. You can create a course in 10 minutes. Like, put
it's
your stuff in, it'll organize it. Like, yeah, the whole you got the I 1000% agree with you. You got time. Now there are people in our profession, man, they're working crazy, but like, come on, let's call it what it is. Like, we have time. It's just a matter of how you're utilizing that time, because there's no one that is not picking up this phone and scrolling a few, 45 minutes a day. So I guarantee you, if it isn't that important to you, you will find time.
right. I think that one other thing there was, I think there are people, you mentioned like supplements and stuff like that, but like sometimes that's just your passion, right? Like, I mean, you and I have passions that go beyond just X's and O's to strength and conditioning. But for a lot of people that are in this business, that is their one and only passion. And, but you can still start a supplement company like Mike Bewley did as a strength coach, or you can start a gym like Lauren Lando did as a strength coach, and hire people to run those things for you, which is what you're doing all day long, every day. And a lot of times you're putting former staff members in those that you trust already because they work for you, And so there's so many different ways that you can do this thing to provide that support and still do what you love to do. And, it's not this reductionist line of thinking where it's either or, like, you can have both. You can do both. And I think that's a lot of the thing that coaches kind of get shied away from with this brand. And you mentioned you have some lofty goals, and one of the things that I always, you know, that was always valuable to me as a coach is that when I had these other things going, it gave me the security to be able to go into my bosses, to go into my coaches, my teams, and be like, hey, look, I don't need this. Like, I'm doing this because I love it.
Mhm.
So, like, we're gonna do it this way, or I'm like, I got another way to make money.
Yeah.
So that confidence, but like, what's the long-term vision for you? How does this all fit together? For you to be the coach that you want to be the business person that you want to be.
Yeah, that's a big question. That one right there. For me, it's to be able to continue to keep Penn State. There's no doubt about it. Being the director of high performance for Penn State, and then being able to go out and share a story of my own personal stuff. there's no doubt that this opens up a lot of doors, and it's extremely humbling, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity. And right now, it just works perfect. It's this perfect match. It's this perfect system. I think the older you get, sometimes your passions change. It's funny in this field is like, I remember, did I just see, I don't even know, but it was one of your guests that I was watching this before we got on, and they were talking about the idea of, we get into it to be a coach, but then to really make money and to really scale, you got to kind of be an administrator and you get further away from the draw. I remember a great story, Tony Rolinski at Notre Dame. I'm not even sure if he's still at Notre Dame, but he said, he's like, I get bumped up as the director then, or a director role. He was training ice hockey and basketball. He's like, I get bumped up into that director's role, and all of a sudden I got to do all this other stuff. He's like, I lasted 2 weeks. He said, take the title back, take the pay back. I just want to go back to coaching. And I think that's where I'm at. So what I would say is that I love the coaching. I love being able to work with people. I'm in my current role at Penn State. I'm more of an administrator of it, which is awesome. I'm learning a ton here. Definitely out of my comfort zone as far as learning some of these different budget stuff, some of these different laws and rules and all these things you got to manipulate. Or, that's a bad word to say. Manage within the NIL space and stuff. But as long as this keeps feeding the passion of that's coming here and being able to go out there and trying to make this world, make athletes, make people to have a more positive, upbeat perspective, I'm in. But the second that I can't try and put a smile on someone's face in whatever environment it is, it's like, and it might be time for me to shift gears a little bit. So I don't think that necessarily answers it, but I think it's all coming from where the heart is right now and where the opportunities are landing.
We end the show with some resources, kind of quick hitters here. What's a mistake that you see young coaches often make?
I think number one thing is they want to be paid and compensated for anything that is asked extra or any opportunity. It not only blows me away, it pisses me off. Like, it drives me crazy when you don't say, hey, if the vice president or the vice provost or the president says, hey, would you mind training me at 5:30 in the morning? That you are not jumping at that opportunity to get in there with coffee in hand. And like, there's so much opportunity that we're presented with all day long. You've got to maximize it, because we won't wear these logos. We won't be part of these big brands forever. So while you're there, get into it and say yes and work your ass off. And to the point you made before, you have time. It's just a matter of the priority. But knowing that in the grand scheme of what we have, these brands open up doors, capitalize on it, and maximize it.
With that more, I think that's probably the one skill that I would say more than anything is that their coaches are notoriously bad with their time management. And that's the number one thing that you got to improve if you're going to be successful in life. 1000%.
And it goes back, I mean, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but we live in a world now where it's all tech. So we have a million data points and we have a million different things we could look at. And how much does it move the needle? I don't know. But I'll tell you what, you sit in front of an Excel sheet or pulling up Catapult on field a million different ways. Boy, you could be consumed with an amount of stuff, let alone if you're just scrolling social media. So my thing is the energy you're putting in, the time you're committing, like, let it move the dial, not only on your athletes' lives, but your own life, and really kind of deep dive into that, because there are gaps, and I guarantee you there's wasted time that is not being better capitalized in something else.
If you could shadow a coach or even a business owner or somebody, who would you shadow for a week?
Man, the guy that jumps in my head first is Gary Vaynerchuk. Gary V. I think he has a great perspective of leadership. I've gotten to hear him speak and met a lot of his different employees, especially up in New York, and he's as transparent as they could be. And the guy just leads from a place of empathy and this place of really genuinely caring about the people that he oversees and employs, but actually like human beings. And I think with that energy, putting it out there for the good reasons, boy, it scales, and it's something that we all need in this world that's happening. And maybe to the point you made about the gyms and the supplements, it's such a great point. Like, it's such a great point. It doesn't matter what it is, but if you're trying to do it because of you're trying to just really help humans and other people, doesn't matter what it is, be ethical. But on the other end, if this omega can really help because you had some kind of heart problem and it helps, Yeah, dive into it and try and help others out. I think that's just such a I'm gonna go back on that. Well, no, I'm not gonna go back on it, but I'm gonna really think about who I would think if I had more time to think about who I'd
I
shadow.
think Gary's great. I've got to know Gary a couple times, and what I love about what he does, I mean, he's a guy that you either love him or you hate him, and there's no in between a lot of times. Like what he's done is he gives away so much, and people think that they're like, why would he give away so much? But like, there is a business model there of like by giving up so much goodwill away that every time he writes a book, there's people lined up to buy it. Every time he speaks, there's people lined up to go listen to him because he has an empathetic heart, or he has a really genuine desire to help people in the entrepreneurial space. And so I can agree with more.
Well, and it even goes, oh man, I could talk to you for days. I know we're thing, but that's the other point of giving it away. Like giving it away, that's even like Coach Cal Dietz, like triphasic, like how much knowledge we know about it, how much has been put out there. Like I know he's made money off of certain things, but I feel like he just gives it away, most of the knowledge and stuff. I mean, when I was at Indiana, that guy came down, we flew him well, he would have flew down and hung out with us for 2 or 3 days and no charge. We offered to at least pay for his flight down there in the hotel, but like he's just a guy that's, at least from my perception, like he just wants to share knowledge, and I think by doing that, man, it comes back to you when you put things out there. There's this natural energy that comes back to you, and sometimes it does take that. Give it away because the bigger game is played a little bit longer.
Yeah, and there's a way that comes back money wise too. But when you start with that, that it becomes a lot easier to find those money models. When you decide to take this serious and that you've set this big goal and all that, what was a book or a resource that you felt was really helpful?
Yeah, you're getting it rolling. It actually, one of my, I'm gonna actually go back to, it was actually an employee, or not an employee, an athlete of ours at Indiana, Matt Mayberry. Matt Mayberry was a linebacker. Um, hope maybe if Matt's gonna listen to this, that would be great too. But Matt was like talking to a cinder block wall when he was a linebacker, grunted a lot. Like the dude is just this alpha, just jacked up guy. Really good linebacker, goes to Chicago. Chicago, he blows out his ankle, doesn't know what he's going to do, but his whole life, like many athletes, it just gets uplifted. And all of a sudden, Matt gets asked to share his story on, I don't know where it was, but it was like at a small school. So he goes out there and shares his story in his very rough and linebacker way. And he's like, man, the whole group just loved it. So he's like, this felt good. And all of a sudden, he just started doing it again. And now Matt makes, 40 grand every time he steps on a stage. He's working with the biggest banks, the biggest, I should say, businesses in the world. And I know he has a big deal with like JP Morgan and stuff like that right now. And this is the guy that went from being the linebacker to literally refining a skill and continually working the skill, and now at the highest level. But the big deal that made it so inspiring was the amount of people that talk about Matt Mayberry and how he's impacted their life and how he's presented this really fundamental way of living, and he's done it so eloquently, which still blows my mind because like the Matt I coached back as a linebacker and how he is now are two different people. But I think when you ask that question, that's been it's kind of neat to say that Matt Mayberry, linebacker, guy a lot younger than me, showed a path that I think is where I'm kind of following.
That's cool. That's really cool. I think it reminds me of, I think sometimes coaches are like, "Oh, I'm just a coach," right? But then you look at you look at these books that are on our shelves and stuff like that. Like John Maxwell was just a pastor, or Andy Stanley was just a pastor, or like we have this incredible platform that we're developing all these skills and all of these stories and all these messages. And if you just start kind of wrapping those things up, like you can create a business where you're making $40,000 every time you step on a stage. And I think that's incredible. I really do.
And I'm telling you, it's like the person that never played sports to the person that is diehard sports. They love to hear the John Wooden talks. They love to be inspired by some of the thing, by Michael Jordan and all these things. You don't even have to love the game. You don't even have to love the idea of sport, but there's always this not natural level of inspiration and we're working in it every day. We're consuming it. We're not only consuming it, but we're having to make decisions in it, and it's always creating a story. And we're just like strength coaches, man, behind it right in there is our weight room. And the amount of things that will happen just today that I guarantee you we could have an audience of 1,000 people want to know what's going on it's unbelievable how quick it could happen. And so, yeah, I just think that we have such a unique position and what we have the ability to be involved in every day that will create an audience to if we want to share it.
Buddy, you are an inspiration in many ways, more than one. And what you said through this that I want to echo and highlight is that when you start with authenticity and a true heart to change people and help people, like there's so many ways that you can provide stability in an unstable environment. And you've done that and in a big way, man. I'm just proud to call you a friend, proud of what you're doing, and really appreciate you coming on the show, buddy.
Man, I really appreciate being here. And yeah, I tell you what, bigger, better things are in the future. And if we live today in this present moment and we control the things that are in control, keep a mindset of gratitude, the world, man, it just keeps getting better and better.